Okay, welcome back. Today we will talk about first language acquisition, and this is the fifth module of the course uh, in applied linguistics. When we want to talk about acquisition, first language acquisition in particular, in fact, one should say first languages acquisition. That means languages that you learn before you are 5 years, 4 years old. All those languages. We need to make a distinction between acquisition and learning. Now, acquisition is something that you naturally acquire. Nobody teaches you how to see, nobody teaches you how to breathe, nobody teaches you how to eat or walk. You acquire them. You just acquire them automatically. Similarly, you automatically acquire the languages that are around you with the just small trigger, the small input from, just as you have input of light to be able to see in darkness and space, or the input of some kind of support to be able to walk to begin with, etc. Similarly, you need some kind of support system, some kind of support trigger to acquire your first language. So that is called language acquisition. Okay, it could be of one language, it could be of two or three languages. So first languages acquisition as a child. The second language and other languages that are acquired later, they're partly called learning. So the difference between acquisition and learning is that acquisition is always natural. Okay, it's a natural environment. Whereas in learning, there is some conscious, deliberate, tutored input involved. So acquisition is natural. Learning, some kind of conscious, deliberate effort is made into. It is not that your language acquisition involves no learning. I mean, language acquisition also involves learning in the sense that you have to learn words. You have to learn new words almost all your life, or certainly till you are into 40s, you keep learning new words. Okay, your vocabulary keeps growing. But there is this fundamental difference to be made between acquisition and learning. And it has been shown that language acquisition is fundamentally acquisition. Languages are learnt only to a minimal extent. Languages are largely acquired. So the best thing you can do for your children, the best thing you can do for your classes and your schools is to create environments which would be acquisition rich environments. What do we mean by acquisition rich environments? That you have lot of comprehensible input, a kind of input where the focus is on message and on meaning. Children can make sense, doesn't matter which language it is. But first condition is that they should be able to make sense of what is going on. Only then acquisition will begin. We should also understand that acquisition will always happen in some kind of a context. Okay, it cannot happen by saying, you don't teach children by saying, look, this is a pen, take a pen, or this is a spec, take these are spectacles, say spectacles, say spectacles. No, this is not what happens. You don't say pen, 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 pen. No, nobody acquires language like that. Just that you're writing and the pen is there and the copy is there and the writing is taking place, and the child will acquire pen and writing and copy and various other things, and how to put them together. All this will be acquired by the child in an acquisition rich environment. So acquisition rich environment will have lot of language, will have situations where meanings can be negotiated, and where there is lot of care, there is lot of affection. When you recollect as a child, as a baby, what was most important to you was the affection and the care that you got from your parents and from your relatives and from various other elder people in the society. that care is very important. It is also important and of fundamental importance that people always thought that your mistakes were great. They never, they laughed at your mistakes, but not mockingly. They shared your mistakes with others, right? Look, she has started speaking like this, and so on. One of the most important aspects in the acquisition of language is for us to be able to appreciate the structure of the human brain, because everything happens through the human brain. It's nothing very mysterious about this, that there is some soul or some divinity there. The human brain, and there is the sounds around and the human brain. And if you see the human brain, there is a picture of the human brain in front of you on the screen. Okay, you will see that picture, and in that picture you will also see two major language areas marked, called Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Okay, and we will come back to them. Now, our brain is divided into two parts. Okay, as you see on the screen, divided into two parts. It's the brain stem and the cerebrum. The brain stem, it is sort of keeps us alive. It keeps our head, and it makes all the physiological things that have to be done. Whereas the cerebrum helps us integrate the environment. It is, that's all there is, to make our body function and to give signals to the body to do something, and to receive signals from outside and do information processing. Okay, whatever information we receive from outside, it is done by the human brain. The human brain, in the case of language acquisition, has to distinguish that the noise of the train or the noise of the fan or the noise of a truck is not relevant noise for language. So the child has to figure out that per and per are different kinds of sounds. You can't tell her, but she figures out. Okay, she figures out the difference between Papa and Baba, okay, and Chacha and Chachi. You don't tell her, look, Chachi में तो ई की मात्रा होती है और उसमें आ की मात्रा होती है. You don't teach children like that. They acquire, they figure out, and it is because of this capacity of the human brain. So the cerebrum is further divided, as you see in the frame on your film, in the slide, that this is divided into the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. There are two hemispheres, and there is a lot of interaction between the two hemispheres. Although people say that certain functions are for the left hemisphere, certain functions are for the right hemisphere. I myself am not fully aware of the technical aspects of this, but the language areas, the Broca's area and Wernicke's area, are sort of in the frontal lobe, and that the Wernicke's area is located, on the other hand, is involved at the back, is a different part of the brain. And the Wernicke's area is basically associated with language comprehension, and Broca's area, as you see on your screen, is basically associated with language production. Very often when there is an injury that impacts the Broca's area or impacts Wernicke's area, there is language disorder. It follows. If it hits Broca's area, then production may be affected. If it hits, you fall from a motorcycle and Wernicke's area is affected, then your language comprehension may be affected. This can happen, but not always. It's not always the case. Your whole brain may go sort of damage this side. This side, the right hemisphere, may take over the functions and you may still function fine. So the human brain is very mysterious, and we may know a lot about the human body, but we almost know nothing about the human brain, very little. There is another very interesting image in the context of language acquisition. I think it's very important for you to understand the image of the vocal tract. This is the next image on your in the slide that you see in front of you, and on this image you see basically from this part to this part. That's all. So let's begin from the bottom here in the vocal tract, and you will see that you will have sort of, as you know, there are two pipes that go down here, and as some of you may be aware that these are two pipes. One is called the windpipe and other is called the food pipe. Now on top of the windpipe here you have two lips, like these two lips about which I'll talk. There are two sort of things sitting here like this, and these are called vocal cords. They are called vocal cords, and they are very important. They are fundamental to our speech mechanism. So everything happens below here. You have a sort of shaft of air coming up, and then it passes through the windpipe. Now, why do we have physiologically, why should we have vocal cords here? I'm sure you can guess that why your parents always tell you, do not speak while you are eating. You should keep quiet while you are eating. Why? Because a food particle may go into your windpipe, and when that happens, then you do you do that kind of thing because a food particle has gone into your windpipe. Now this is a very common phenomenon. So that vibration of the vocal cords here, which is a phenomena of voicing. I mean, there must be a course in phonetics where you will learn about these things in far greater detail, but I am telling you things that may be relevant only for applied linguistics, which you should know, and maybe you have forgotten. So these vocal cords vibrate like this, in various ways. But two major ways are when they cause voicing. When they are vibrating like this, it's called voicing. When they are like this, then it's called voicelessness. This is a state of voicelessness. This is a stage of voicing, the vibration in the vocal cords. Now come to the lips. So from here we move straight to the end. That's the vocal tract from here to here. On the lips is produced what in Hindi you might call the pavarg. That means pa, pa, ba, bha, ma. You understand? Pa, pa, ba, bha, ma. That's on the lips. And they are called bilabial sounds because they are produced on the lips. Now, what is the difference? Have you ever thought what is the difference between Papa and Baba? The only difference between Papa and Baba is the difference between Pa and Ba. And what is that difference? Have you ever taught your child that, look, this is the difference, do like this? Nor the child get down here and see what is happening. The fundamental difference between Pa and Ba is no difference, because Pa is bilabial and so is Ba. The difference is that in the case of Pa, vocal cords are like this. In the case of Ba, they are vibrating like this. That's all. And that difference the child acquires. So if you see the vocal tract, so you have lips, sounds at the lips, sounds at the teeth, right here, tatha dadhana, and then you can turn your tongue like this in Hindi, like this, tip of the tongue and the hard palate here. This is the palate region which you see in your diagram, and you can do the tavarg, tatha dadhana, you can do the tavarg, or you can make sounds here, back here, and you can say kakha ga ghanga, kakha ga ghanga. These are the sounds made here, okay, and so on. So I am giving you a very broad picture of the human vocal tract, which is what is required for first language acquisition and for all kinds of language acquisition in the future. So there is a role of the environment, there is a role of the input in language acquisition, and very often as children grow up, you will notice that it is only the context. For example, I may simply say, for example, if there is a water bottle sitting like this, for example, and I don't even say a sentence, I don't say anything, and I say, so that becomes language. Or I can say water, just that's all, and it becomes meaningful in the context. So in a certain context, you need a context to make languages meaningful. For example, if you take a sentence like the door is open, okay, let's take that sentence, the door is open. Now, if somebody knocks at your door and you are sitting inside, what does the sentence mean? You say from inside, the door is open. That sentence simply means, please come in, right? Somebody is knocking at the door, you are sitting inside, and somebody says, tuck, 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 and you say, the door is open, please come in. But suppose you are conducting an interview for a very important corporate position, and the candidate begins to misbehave, he says something silly or thinks too highly of himself, and you are sick and tired of him, and you say, the door is open. That means get out. Get out of here. Or, for example, it's very cold, and cold breeze draft is coming from outside, and everybody is in the quilt, and you slowly say, the door is open. That means you get up and close the door. I will not get up and close the door. So, same sentence can have different meanings in different contexts. That is why for language acquisition, context is so important. So, the best you can do as language teachers is to present language to children in different kinds of contexts where they can make sense of it. Consider, for example, the following conversation. They'll come tomorrow. When? Noon. You have everything. Now you see, this in itself means nothing. But in the context, it means maybe some people are coming for dinner and the other person is asking, are you ready? Do you have everything with you? Etc. And there is, why the context is so important? The famous case, the famous example in this case is the case of Ginny. Okay. The case of Ginny is the case of a very unfortunate girl who, by very cruel father, was tied to a sort of potty chair with chains for over 10 years or 12 years maybe. She was given food and she would wash and clean herself, and then she was tied to in the toilet. That's where she spent all this time. And then it was found, then she was released and she came into the society. But unfortunately, she could learn a few words, she could speak some sentences, but she could not become a normal language. She could not normally acquire language. She could not acquire the full syntactic range of language. So that is why context is so important. We also talk very often of the critical period hypothesis. We will talk later about this. The critical period hypothesis is that given by Penfield and Roberts in 1959. The hypothesis suggests that between the age of 2.5 to the age of about 12, 13, 14, the human mind is very plastic. You can acquire as many languages as you are exposed to. It is that plastic. And you begin to lose that plasticity as you grow older and older and older. To some extent, of course, it is true, but I think we must also appreciate the fact that the language faculty stays with us all our lives. language faculty, the universal language faculty that is constitutive of being human, that does not die with the passage of time. That is why you marry a person from Kerala who is a speaker of Malayalam and speaks no other language. Suppose she comes to, let us say, Allahabad or Meerut or Varanasi and is married to a Hindi speaker in a Hindi family. After a few years, she becomes a fluent speaker of Hindi. And immigrants, there are hundreds of cases. Ambassadors, people who work for foreign countries, they learn the language. So the faculty of learning languages stays with you. Yes, one thing is true, that the human jaw becomes increasingly, frozen, increasingly habituated to one or two or three languages. So when it is asked to speak the sounds of the new language, it becomes more difficult. So at the level of pronunciation, yes, there are problems, but at the level of lexicon, you are better actually. If you are an adult, you are better. At the level of syntax, you are actually better. So adults may acquire the language better than children, except in the case of pronunciation. People have also talked about stages of acquisition, but not particularly meaningful now. People talk of cooing stage and babbling stage, and then children talk of one-word stage and two-word stages, and then full utterances, and then the whole discourse level, the different levels of stages which you will read in your module, and they have been explained. The last thing I would like to share with you in the process of language acquisition is our attitude towards errors. This is very, very important. Our attitude towards error is that we always stigmatize them. We always make red circles. So if somebody makes a mistake, let us say she walked to college, so we put a circle around walk. In the margin, we will write walks and feel very happy, without ever wondering that what will it do to the child. We never even ask, why has the child done this mistake? Why has she written, she walked to the college in the first instance? She eat a mango every day. Why has she written that? Please try to understand that there is strong structural pressure of the English language to say she, he, eat rather than she, he, it eats. Why? Because I eat, you eat, they eat, we eat. Everybody on earth eat. It's only the poor third person singular and only in the present tense that eats. So there is a structural pressure to say eat. So please look at it like that. Take the case of first language acquisition of the word go, for example. All children, whether in England or in Australia or in America or New Zealand or in India, irrespective of where you are learning English, if you are learning go, went, gone, and irregular forms of the verb like that, you have to go through three stages. The first stage will be go, went, gone. You learn that as three isolated words. You learn go, went, gone. But at that time, you do not see the connection between go, went, and gone. There are three different words. The second stage is go, goed, goed, which every teacher will put a circle and put on the side and say went or gone. The problem is go, goed, goed is actually a reflection of learning and acquisition rather than a reflection of making mistake. The child has learned the rule that ed is added to the verb in the past tense. So she has added it to go also. Then the third stage, she would finally figure out that this is a listed item, that this is an exception to the general ed rule. So go, went, gone will now be learned as three related items which are irregular. So I think we should appreciate errors as necessary stages in the process of learning and not sort of keep putting red marks. I'm not saying don't correct them. I am saying correcting them, improving their English with this awareness is one thing. Doing it blindly with a chip on your shoulder is quite another. Thank you very much.